Hello, in this video I'm going to explain what neurodiversity means. This is a very important concept to me that has really revolutionised how I look at my autism. Neurodiversity is a framework or a paradigm, a way of seeing the world that acknowledges that our brains work differently. And it was popularised in 1999, I think, very early on by Judy Singer. And it's a term that really is latching on to this trend of diversity and understanding that people are different, and something that's been happening in the last few decades that we're really beginning to not just understand but appreciate that people are different to us and see people as unique individuals with their unique contributions to society, to organisations, to groups. And we've also seen a less of a pressure to conform to the norm, that realising that there isn't that much of a norm. It is very much that people are different and unique. One definition that's important perhaps to say is that neurodiverse and neurodiversity strictly refers to a community or a society, whereas an individual can be described as neurodivergent. Although sometimes people will use the term neurodiverse to mean an individual because it seems a little bit more polite than to say this person is divergent. It sounds a little bit negative that this person is in some way diverging from other people. But technically that is a correct term, and we really is something that is good to embrace, that it is good to be divergent. With neurodiversity, it's understanding that there are differences in our brain. To some extent, all our brains are different. There is some specific conditions which have been seen as deficits and seen as problems and seen as illnesses that actually are just purely differences that we can embrace in this understanding of diversity. And these include autism spectrum disorder, though it's called a disorder in diagnostic criteria. That's the medical model, and it's neurodiversity sees it as a difference. Autism is a difference in social and communication behaviour as well as thinking. There's also ADHD, which is attention deficit and hyperactivity disorder. And again, that can be thought of as a difference rather than a disorder, where someone might be easily distracted but also be quite impulsive and hyperactive. Other ones that are included are dyslexia, where people do have some difficulties in writing and spelling and word recognition. Dyscalculia, where people have similar problems with numbers and calculations. And dyspraxia, which is to do with movement and coordination and problems with balance and spatial awareness. Another syndrome is Tourette's that we can talk about, which is where people have verbal and physical tics, for example. Each one of these differences, disorders, as they're called in the medical model, but we like to think of them as differences, each one of these have both their strengths and the challenges. So, for example, with autism, we can have a number of strengths, which on this channel we'll go into, but in more detail as we go along. But just to say, they can be to do with focus, they can be to do with seeing detail and processing and remembering details, for example. ADHD can have a creativity involved in there and an energy and a passion, as well as the hyperfocus that you can get with autism as well. Some of the other ones that you might think, well, they're purely disorders, they're purely problems like dyslexia. We can find that dyslexic people can be quite visual in their thinking, for example, and creative. Someone with dyscalculia can have greater verbal skills. Someone with dyspraxia also might have those verbal skills, but also some empathy and intuition. And someone with Tourette's might have greater observational skills or cognitive control, actually, which is ironic, but maybe because they've learned to control the tics that they have a greater sense of self-control, but as well as those observational and creativity skills. Seeing all these different things that some might dismiss as disorders actually make a great tapestry of differences, and all of these people have great contributions to our society. If you acknowledge these different strengths, we can have a much more healthier society by seeing everyone has their own unique contributions. That just as a ecosystem is much more healthy and balanced if it has a biodiversity in there than if it is a monoculture, if it is just one plant. It's not really a balanced ecosystem. In the same way, societies, groups, organisations are much more healthy if we have different people with different strengths contributing into them. I think what's happening is there is a trend towards understanding ourselves, understanding our strengths and understanding our weaknesses. Finding ourselves, finding safe spaces where we can be ourselves, and understanding neurodiversity in organisations enables people to do that. And people who are different in these ways have often been misunderstood and have often had motivations attributed to them that weren't true. But increasingly what's happening is we're beginning to say, there are strengths here that are valuable to society, and overall those prejudices are reducing, although there are still some backlashes happening to this trend in some areas. But nevertheless, I would say there is a way in which the future is bright, and is already here, in that there is some good news for neurodivergent people, in that we can be cautiously optimistic about the future.